I hope everyone enjoyed the keynote panel and some of the issues that we were touched upon there. We're going to be obviously going into a lot more detail in this one. Good to see some familiar faces out there. Shame we can't meet face to face, as I said earlier in the bar. Duncan, haven't seen you for a long time. How are you? Looking very well, mate. Just let everyone know you will be on mute automatically. Still got a few people coming. It's a very popular session. Good to see. Excellent. Okay. Right. I think I know we've still got Martin Allison is joining us. Good to see you this morning, Martin. It almost feels like the start of a proper ActiveNet, doesn't it? Seeing all these old faces again. Okay, good morning, everyone. Right, we'll kick off. We've only got 55 minutes to do this session, so we've got quite a lot to go through. So welcome to this breakout session of ActiveNet 2021. And we've got about 55 minutes, as I said, to look at the National Leisure Recovery Fund, but we're also going to be focusing a little bit more specifically on moving communities, which is starting off as the monitoring and evaluation tool of the National Leisure Recovery Fund, but hopefully, as you're going to hear today, is going to move on to become something much much bigger, more important, much more long term. So I'd just like to introduce you to the panel to start off with. First of all, we've got Emma Bernstein. So Emma is Capital Investment Manager at Sport England. She's joined by her colleague Kevin Mills, who obviously was taking part in the previous keynote panel. We've got Caroline Constantine, who I'm sure most of you know, Director at Right Directions, and has been program manager for Quest for the last, I think it was 15 years. Is it, Caroline, you mentioned yesterday? At least 15 years. And then finally, we've got Utku Topkris7. I was going to get that out in one go. I just said it really quickly. Good to see you again, Utku. Utku is partner and director of sport intelligence at 4 Global, and I'm sure most of you know has been heavily involved in the development of Data Hub in particular in the sector. So we're going to be kicking off with a bit of a presentation for this one, because we're aware that this is probably quite a new thing to a lot of you. So we're going to do about 15-20 minutes talking you through the National Leisure Recovery Fund, and more specifically moving communities and the role that this has got to play. Utku, can you mind getting the slides up? And just to kick things off and give us some overall perspective, so moving communities is all about understanding the public leisure's contribution to active communities. If you could just move on to the next slide, just give people a background of who's behind it. Obviously, this is a Sport England initiative, but it's been managed by the same partnership that has been managing MBS for the last 12 years. So LeisureNet Solutions, I lead on it within LeisureNet. Utku leads on it from 4 Global's point of view. Lisa Forsyth, who's in another session today, is a director of Max Associates. Simon Shibley has been involved with MBS since its inception, not with us today, but Sheffield Hallam University bring that real academic rigor to this initiative. And then finally, Right Direction, as I say, we've got Caroline with us today. So you've pretty much got the whole team here to answer, to hopefully explain all about this initiative, the importance of it to the sector, and then hopefully answer as many questions as we can in the time that we've got. So could I hand over to you, Emma, just to give us a bit of background and Sport England's perspective on this, and really the context of the whole of the whole thing.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mike, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining the session with us this morning. I'd just like to really add to Mike's introduction with a few comments around the background to the platform and particularly what the benefits are of using this service going forward. So as you're aware, we've already spoken about it this morning, the National Leisure Recovery Fund, that biddable fund of 100 million made available by DCMS and MHCLG through Sport England, very much there to support local authorities and their providers with the reopening of outsourced public leisure provision as we emerge from the pandemic. But that pandemic absolutely highlighted the need for the sector to be able to evidence its impact. That's both in terms of numbers, financial participation numbers, but in terms of the value, and the keynotes this morning touched on those wider social outcomes, how we can contribute to this health, mental well-being, community cohesion.
Sorry, Emma, can I just stop you 1 second? If anyone isn't on mute, could I just ask them to mute themselves? We're getting a fair bit of background noise. I'm going through and muting as many people as I can, but if you can mute yourself. Thank you very much. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. So yeah, just to reiterate that point, really the pandemic has highlighted that need to be able to evidence impact, and we've taken an opportunity at Sport England to secure some additional funding outside of the National Leisure Recovery monies to develop the Moving Communities platform. And we really believe this is an opportunity to create step change in terms of data collection and sharing of the insight. We absolutely know it's a pressurised time at local authorities and at the centres themselves. And as you'll see shortly, we have tried to develop an automated system to take the brunt of the work away from the coalface. But what I wanted to just touch on was really, before we get into the detail of the platform, the three main sets of users for this service and the benefits for each of them. So the service has been set up for local authorities, operators and national partners, be that Sport England, government, UK Active Cluck, etc. But you'll see the benefits there across the slide, and I won't read them out, but just to kind of highlight three keywords that I think really make the Moving Communities platform stand out from others. This platform will really bring together an opportunity to demonstrate the outputs and the outcomes of a service, both at a local level and at a national level. It will allow comparison, and by comparison I mean of your own figures, that be it across a time frame, be it across centre by centre, but also comparison across national averages and comparable wider data sets. And we'll touch a little bit on that through the filtering section shortly. And the final thing I think is probably the biggest benefit is influencing. This can be for several different groups depending on the user, but I think cabinet members, portfolio holders, clients for the operators themselves, and government, will give us an opportunity to really showcase the work of our sector and make the case for further support going forward. So I think I'm going to hand over to Utsu just to give you a bit of an overview of the platform, the different data sets that feed into it, and then we'll take you through each of the individual elements briefly.
Thank you very much, Emma, and hi everyone. So just building on Emma's points about the benefits, this is about how we bring these benefits to life. So this is the operating model that sits behind the Moving Communities platform. So I will give you some information about what data sets are going in and what type of insight we are generating in the Moving Communities platform. First of all, the aim of the platform is to give a 360 view of the whole operations that are happening within the leisure center environment within a local authority. So we have 4 key data sets feeding into the platform. These are participation data, primarily coming from the leisure management systems of the operators, the income and expenditure data that sits in the finance system of the operators, and then the 2 new data sets that are added after the recovery fund application period. For the first 2 data sets, the participation data and income and expenditure data, we have created an automated system through the data hub. So the manual input is minimum in those ones, so we can actually automate the full process and make it as efficient and as easy as possible for operators and local authorities to get this data into the platform. Then in the other 2 data sets, we have the customer experience data, which is coming through the customer experience surveys that will be conducted across all leisure centers and will give us insights about the confidence of people to come back to the facilities or their satisfaction levels from the experience they had in the facility. And then finally, we have the service delivery data, the facility management type of data coming from the Quest assessments through the specific service that is configured for the purposes of the recovery fund through the Quest Prime service. So these four data sets all come into our database, where it is standardized against the sector standards and also collected via a compliant way through all the data privileges being respected, and making sure it is then fed into a number of specific KPI dashboards, which you see in the red area on top. In terms of the different types of insight we generate from this data, it is about participants and visits with the specific breakdowns into different demographic segments, target segments, and ethnicity, disability type of breakdowns as well. Then we have the financial value and social value as the two types of like returns from evaluation perspective. So you can actually get access to some of the key insights in those more economic terms and also the social terms in terms of the value generated. Then we have the customer experience dashboard, which is fed by this user survey data. And then we have the service delivery dashboard, which is again getting the information from the Quest assessments into that section. We have the three user groups, which Emma was referring to earlier. So we have the national user group, so which includes Sport England, Community Leisure UK, LGA, Active Partnerships, and UK Active. Then we have local authorities accessing the platform to have a full visibility of their own operations and also benchmark it against the national and also similar local authorities. And then we have the operators accessing it from their own business perspective and also get benchmark data. Just a quick overview of the type of KPIs we track in the platform. So I'm not going to go one by one through them, but basically on the participant side, it's much more about who is using the facility and how do we break this down into different like age, gender, deprivation groups, or like the different deprivation layers, and also the ethnicity and disability groupings. On the visits, it's much more about the frequency of use and how this total participation breaks down into different types of activities, so you can get a view of that. Then we have the financial KPIs, which is much more about the income per visit, subsidy per visit type of allocation of the total income figures, income expenditure figures over the throughput data. Then we have the social value KPIs, which is primarily about like the value, quantifiable value generated in improved health, increased subjective well-being, educational attainment, and reduced crime. And then we have customer experience KPIs, which is the customer confidence to come back to the facility, the net promoter score, the cleanliness of the facility, and the changing areas. And then we have the service delivery KPIs, which is about the mystery visits and facility quality assessment scores. We will go into those further in detail in the next couple of slides. So I will pass over to Mike to speak a little bit about our approach on customer experience specifically, and then Caroline will build on that on the service delivery side.
Thanks, Utku. So yeah, personally and professionally, I'm very excited about this customer experience survey. It's going to be the largest survey of its kind ever undertaken in our sector. We're looking at over 1,000 sites, local authority, leisure centre sites taking part. It's going to be a mixture of those that are managed in-house and those that are managed or outsourced. So potentially, I think this is a minimum. We're looking at a minimum sample across certainly England of 50,000 plus, and we could well be getting up to 75,000, 100,000 if we get good response levels. So it really is an amazing opportunity to collect data, and these are the key areas that we're looking at within the survey. So we're building on the data that we get already from Data Hub, but we're complementing that with questions around ethnicity and disability status. So that's going to enable us to get a really good 360 view of the types of users, the people that are actually coming into the centres as we reopen. Secondly, we've got the actual customer experience bit. Several questions in here, but I guess the key ones are Net Promoter Score, which I'm sure you're all familiar with by now. And secondly, one that is new to the sector this year, something that LeisureNet developed in some of our lockdown surveys, and it's called the Customer Confidence Indicator. And it asks customers how confident and comfortable they felt during their last visit in terms of COVID-19 protocols. And we've got some benchmarks already from that, from last year when the sites reopened. And that's scored in the same way as NPS, looking at the percentage of 9 and 10s and then minusing the percentages of 0 to 6s. So it's quite a tough matrix, but we know that we need to get those confidence levels right up if we're going to get people to come back and keep coming back. Thirdly, we're looking at activity patterns and habits. So we're looking at probably the key area here is, for the first time, we're going to be asking people about their total activity levels and then the breakdown between what they do in site and what they do independently out of site. So that's going to be really interesting. It will be able to establish the contribution that the leisure centre makes to total activity levels. We've then got some open questions around perceived benefits of using their local leisure centres and the impact that it has on their lives. So these are going to help us to establish how important the local leisure centre is in terms of people activity levels and the value that they place on it. Does it help them to be more active? Does it encourage them to exercise more intensely than what they can do at home or independently outside? And there's also opportunities for local authorities to work with their operators to add a single local bespoke question. So all of this is within the context of recovery from COVID, and it's really a key part in helping us to provide evidence and make the case for the sector going forward. Thanks, Utku.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my slot on Quest. For those of you who know Quest and have known Quest for the last, we've actually been running it for 10.5 years, Mike, not quite 15. We decided last year, based on communication with lots of Quest clients and Sport England and the industry, that we did need to change Quest quite significantly based on the pandemic. So we rewrote Quest, and it's now called Quest Prime, and it was deliberately written to help leisure facilities demonstrate to their local authorities, their stakeholders, customers, that they were robust and had good control measures in place to ensure that they could be ready for activity when we reopened. So we've also got a nice new logo called Actively Ready, which can sit as window stickers on the doors. So that's what we've written. We've written a new scheme. Utku, if you could go on to the next slide, please. It's basically 7 key modules. It's written with all of it is pandemic relevant. It's not to do with long-term business plans or environmental plans, which we know are really important. But this is written specifically to help you all as centres to get through the next year and demonstrate that you're doing a good job. So the modules include cleaning and hygiene, operational management, which is about directions of travel through the buildings, what activities you've put in what places, where you've put sanitizer stations, where you're keeping touch points to a minimum, that sort of thing. Then we've got managing the team, which is about staff knowing about COVID, knowing what they've got to do, where they've got to be, about helping the business get back up and running, customer service, that sort of thing. Then we've got customer journey. So this module is about getting from basically into the building. So that includes websites, telephone calls, making sure that you're ready to have us back in. And then the journey through the centre, their activity, how the staff treated them, what measures were in place when they went and did an activity, be it swimming, fitness, etc. And throughout to the other end, so how you dealt with feedback and our comments at the end. Then we've got programming, so that's about how we're getting as actively as we can back in. So what are we putting on in our sports halls, what we can and can't do, whether or not we're adhering to the guidance set out by the government. And then finally, we've got community engagement. So how are we talking to our members? What's our digital packages? How are we getting out and engaging specifically with the people who haven't come back yet? or potentially haven't come at all. So that's the new Quest modules. The one Quest module that stayed the same is compliance declaration. Obviously, Sport England, as this is a Sport England scheme, they do need to know that the leisure centres that we are assessing are compliant to the statutory regulations. So this module is about statutory stuff, and again, a difficult year. Lots of facilities haven't been able to get inspections done and things, so it's a check through those. If you could move on to the next slide. So basically, from Quest Prime, several questions have been pulled from that and scores and are going onto the Moving Communities platform. And these are deemed to be the really heavy, significant questions that will make a big difference to local authorities, knowing what's been happening. So the questions that are being moved across are the overall Quest Prime result, so the banding that's coming across, and the bandings are satisfactory, good, very good, and excellent. There is an unsatisfactory banding, but nobody last year that did Quest Prime fortunately got that result. Then we're pulling across the module banding for cleaning and hygiene and customer journey, and then some specific hygiene, cleaning questions, operational management questions, managing the team question, and 2 from customer journey. And those are pulled through to the front page of the dashboard, which I think Atku will show you later, will be pulled through for local authorities to be able to see those bandings. If you have received a grant from Sport England through the National Leisure Recovery Fund, those results will all go on. But also, if you are a local authority that has does Quest Prime this year, those results will go on as well. So everybody who does Quest Prime will go onto the platform for you to be able to benchmark with other organisations. I think that's me done. I'm going to hand over.
Thank you very much, Caroline. It was great. So in this last bit of the presentation, I'm just going to give you a quick feel of the platform without going on it, but just sharing a couple of screenshots from it so you understand how this process from data collection into sharing the insights would work. So first, the platform will have 4 main sections. I mean, the first part of it is the data entry. So it's about how we get the data into the platform. As mentioned earlier, we have made this process as efficient as possible. So operators and local authorities will need minimum resources to share it with the platform itself. Then on the dashboards and filters and map side, they will be more focused on getting the insight out of the platform. So I'll just share one screen from each of these sections. So on the data entry side, we have used the templates generated for the recovery fund applications into the platform. This way, we are able to collect this data if operators are integrated into the data hub in an automated way from them and feed those numbers on a monthly basis into the platform. You are only seeing the breakdown by part throughput numbers, but obviously on the back of this, we have the data at the individual people level in terms of age, gender, postcode of each individual, so we can do detailed calculations. We have a similar process for the finance data, and then the customer experience data comes into the platform via the surveys, and the Quest Prime assessments are automatically integrated into it as well. So that data is coming into the platform too. So what do the dashboards look like? So we have 6 dashboards. I mean, we have a summary dashboard screen where we get 1 KPI from each of these areas as the summary KPI onto the platform. The platform allows the operators and local authorities to set up their preferences so they can do different benchmarks. So in this one, you are seeing demo site, a single site being compared with the trust averages. Obviously, all data is demo data in here, what you see. So this gives them a one-stop shop in order to see a summary view from the 360 operations in their business and also get relevant benchmarks in those 6 KPI areas. Then within each of these dashboards, they can have a full view of more KPIs and more graphs. They can get to the detail of that individual area. We are working with operators and local authorities to help them better interpret this information, and both through the training sections, the more functional training sessions, but also through the insight sessions to get the best out of the platform. Filtering is an important part of this platform, so it allows operators to have access to their individual site data or local contract data, and they can benchmark it with nation leverages or with the averages that are from the sites that are managed by trust, by commercial management, or by local authority in-house. Then local authorities can also do benchmarking based on SIPFA statistical neighbors, so they can find the most relevant benchmarks to themselves from the similar local authorities based on their population and financial data. And they can basically also set the time frames for different time periods as well to make longitudinal analysis or like benchmarking based on different time frames. Finally, we are getting the data at the individual level with the postcodes of the individuals coming to the facilities as well. So we are also creating a location intelligence layer in an interactive map within the platform. So operators and local authorities can see where within the local authority their members are coming from. They can add ward boundaries and analyze the data to the lowest levels of like postcode districts or ward or LSOA levels, and they can find out where are the gaps in terms of their participation data, so where they can find people who are using the facilities less, so they can actually put targeted interventions to get these people utilize the facilities even more. There are also context layers built on the back of the platform, so they can also add deprivation, ethnicity, demographic segments, or health conditions or obesity data on the back of their own data set, and they can see where there are gaps in terms of the leisure center provision. Obviously, for local authorities, it's also an opportunity to address some of the gaps in physical activity participation, not just through the leisure center, but through other interventions they are putting in place. So I'll stop in here to make sure we have enough time for questions later on, and yeah, pass it over back to Mike.
Lovely, thanks, Utku. That's brilliant. Right, we've got a few questions coming in. First question is probably best answered by you Utku, from Martin. Thanks for the question, Martin. Martin said, picking up from Tara's comment about our audience profile, research report about facility in Northumberland published last week highlighted the problem of data only coming from membership systems, not pay and play or concessionary. Will the new system collect all data so we can demonstrate social value across the whole community, not just the members who perhaps tend to be better off? Utku, it's a very valid question, one that's always been asked in our sector. What would you say to that?
Yeah. I mean, thank you for the question, Martin. I think that's I will answer it in two parts. First part is people who use the leisure centers, but not as a member, but as a pay and play or concessionary service. So they are still in the databases of the leisure centers operators. But the problem was, especially pre-COVID, we were not really doing a great job in tracking this data through the management systems. Now, one of the advantages of the lockdown and after post-lockdown periods have been the data has become much more central in terms of how you track people in the facility, if they are pay and play customers or they are full-time members of your facilities. So I think one improvement in the data collection is going to be, which we are already seeing in the past 9-10 months, is how you track every individual that use the facility. So this will include pay and play and concessionary members. But obviously we acknowledge not every activity is happening within the leisure center environment. There is a lot happening outside the leisure centers as well. And that's where we work with local authorities to look at other data sets from other programs happening outside leisure centers, in parks, or other community programs to feed into this data set as well. So we are working with Sport England to continuously look at the roadmap of the moving communities journey, and I see that very much as another key data set that will add huge value to build the full picture, full place-based local picture of activity. But we have made a significant progress in that in the past 4 or 5 years, I think, and it will just get better. And hopefully this will be one of the positive things we will remember from this period in terms of collecting and tracking better data.
Absolutely. Thanks, Utku. Just a reminder to everyone, we welcome your questions or comments. Just pop them in the chat box and I'll either ask them on your behalf or I can unmute you and we can get your cameras on. Please feel free to put your cameras back on as well. There's nothing worse than looking at a lot of blank black boxes out there. The only person I can see is Martin, and is it your wife bringing you cups of tea on a regular basis, Martin? Right then, just building on that though, I just wanted to make a couple of points about, I could see a few screens coming back on. Thanks everyone. This is, to my mind, a bit of a once in a lifetime opportunity. Kevin, you've joined us hot off the press from the keynote panel. Perhaps would you like to just give us a minute or two on why you think this is a unique opportunity for the sector and why it's important to everyone involved in the sector, not just operators, but suppliers and you know, all of that infrastructure or that ecosystem around our sector?
Yeah, I think we've always known this is that it's difficult to get across the value of the sector. It's okay when we're talking to people within it, and we've lost an awful lot of capacity within the client sector, as Debbie was saying earlier. And what we need is a robust evidence base that just helps that message get across. And that needs to be done at a local level as well as the national level. Obviously, from my point of view, then a greater depth and breadth of evidence on a scale like this, which has never been achieved before, will make it easier to convince government to affect policy, to affect investment decisions, to get government to realise the impact and the value that the public sector leisure has on communities around the country. If we can have that depth and breadth of evidence and insight, then that's going to make that case so much easier to make. But on a local level, it's essential too. You know, you're dealing with portfolio holders, cabinet members. We see this a lot at the LGA leadership programs that Martin's been heavily involved in leading, that when members are taken on the portfolios, they don't necessarily come from this sector. To be able to give them evidence to demonstrate the value of leisure. It's not about more people playing badminton, coming for a swim. Yes, that's important. It's important that activity, I said, but it's the outcomes from that, and demonstrating the health and social value that is attributable to this sector will be absolutely essential. I often have discussions with authorities where there might be pressure to reduce investment or even to close facilities. To actually be able to demonstrate the value that a facility has or the provision has, and get them to understand that the £200,000 saving that might accrue is far outweighed by the significant loss of value to those communities. But sometimes it's a struggle to get that evidence together. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, Mike. There was an opportunity within Sport England to grab a considerable amount of resource on the back of the NLRF to achieve this. And I know some people are looking at us and saying that it's a lot of pressure the sector is under at the moment. But this was an opportunity to grab this level of resource and just help to make this the step change in the sector, which we hope will benefit everyone who works and tries to support this sector at the levels of investment.
Lovely. Thanks, Kevin. I've got a good question from Julian Whiffington. Julian, I can't see you on camera. I'm going to ask you to unmute. If you're there, you can now speak and actually ask your own question.
Yeah, it was just really to sort of understand the thoughts behind, and I appreciate we're discussing really from a local authority perspective at the moment, but we are quite a splintered industry. You know, the private members only clubs have compete directly with local authority facilities in the areas where they think they can make money, so memberships, things like that. And traditionally the local authority facilities are left to sort of serve the rest really, and provide the social inclusion services, which really should be, if we in a fair and equitable society, they would be supported and funded by the by the delivery of services that are, that are profit making. I just wondered if there's any thoughts on how private facilities can contribute to the recovery, really, because otherwise we're doing a lot of social inclusion work to access people who perhaps otherwise wouldn't be able to access facilities, and the private sectors are creaming off the cream. Really.
Thanks, Julian. Interesting question. As you say, this event, I mean, ActiveNet has always had a public sector leisure focus, and certainly the NLRF and the work that Sport England is doing is public sector focused. Emma, I don't know if I could ask you to comment on that. What do you feel is what's Sport England's attitude to the private sector contribution to this? I mean, this, because increasingly Sport England is looking at all partners, aren't you? You're not just looking at NGBs and local authorities. It's very much seeing, well, anyone can help us who can help us to achieve our objectives that we want to talk to. Could you give us a few words on that?
Well, I think absolutely, activity happens in many different places, of which public-private facilities, active environment, having a role, particularly over the lockdown. I think it's articulating that value. The Moving Communities programme at the moment is obviously focusing on public leisure facilities, but we're in conversations and we've built on the UK active work that started off under the same name, Moving Communities. So we're working with them as a key partner to understand that dynamic, and they're very keen to look at the private facilities and the dynamic and how we join up the recovery with them and the public facilities working together. So yeah, in terms of what we're talking about right now, this, I'll just reiterate it, the focus of the data that will be sat in Moving Communities at the moment will be public facilities, but we've spoken already about the place-based potential for this tool. I think that includes private, it includes NGB clubs. There's a wealth of data that can be brought together. This is very much a starting point, but yeah, really value that question.
Brilliant, thanks, Emma. Natalie, I don't know, are you available to ask your question? I'll ask you to unmute. You don't have to put your camera on if you don't want to, but
yes,
far away.
Sorry, I'm doing my very best to be professional, but I can't get rid of the dog today, unfortunately, so I have to keep my camera off. I was just wondering, obviously, the information presented is really, really interesting and great for NGBs to better position themselves to support a whole host of stakeholders, whether it's local authority or other. So I'm just wondering if it's accessible for NGBs, and is there a way of working collectively to make sure the information and the data is used effectively?
Who would like to answer that one? I know that we're talking about it. I guess it's a combination, perhaps Emma, to you to kick off with, and then possibly Utku on access. But we're going to try and make this, before you start, I should have mentioned that all of this information is going to be collated into quarterly reports with sector-wide webinars, which will be open to everyone in the sector. That's my understanding. Emma, we want to disseminate this information as much as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That was sort of going to be my first point. I think there's the communication of the data, and that obviously the views of that we can tailor to different needs. I've had a number of NGBs speak to me already about how they might get views on this data, and really keen to pick up those conversations. This is absolutely a source of information that we would like to share and for people to be referring to, so that we have got consistent numbers being used across the sector. So yeah, if there are NGBs that would like access, then it's definitely something we'd like to pick up. So I don't know if you want to talk about any of the practicalities of that.
Not really. I mean, it's along the same lines. I mean, we've been working with governing bodies for the past many years in terms of getting access to data and giving visibility to different sports-based information, and also its links to social value and other KPIs. So again, I mean, that's part of the roadmap with the Moving Communities as well. So we would be more than happy to have that conversations to see how they can utilize the data relevant to the part of the sector they are in.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Got a good question here from Duncan. Duncan, I'm going to unmute you if you're happy to ask it yourself. We still can't hear you, Duncan. give it another go. You look like you're unmuted, but no, it's not working, mate. Sorry. I'll ask it for you. We tried. So yeah, Duncan was asking a really interesting question. Does this initiative just encourage local authority leisure to move closer to and ape the low cost sectors? And is this the role of the sector and why it gets funded? So I guess there's two issues to this for me. There's the issue of the quality of the operation, and then there's perhaps the bigger issue of what really is the role of local authority leisure provision, whether it's direct or whether it's through third parties. Is it about making money, breaking even, reducing subsidies, or is it about really reaching targeted groups? But Caroline, do you want to just kick off first of all, perhaps focusing on that issue of quality of operations and your view on whether local authorities, there's a risk that local authorities are just going to race to the bottom and ape the low cost sector?
Funny, I was having a conversation with somebody at the university of Hertfordshire yesterday about standards and how scared we were about standards dropping because everybody's got to cut their costs more and more. I still think that quality and service delivery will be the thing that keeps our sector going. And I really do hope that everybody keeps and maintains the standards of cleanliness and hygiene that we've all got used to in the last year, and that's a challenge. It's a massive challenge for the sector in terms of cost to be able to deliver that going forward. Certainly working in Quest for the last 20 years and as an assessor, cleaning is probably, and hygiene and those sort of things have been, and maintenance, our lowest scoring modules, which is no fault of anybody's really, other than the local authority, money in the system. And to keep it going, I think expectations of customers now is going to be really high, and we've got to be very careful that we don't let those standards drop when people do leave our sector to go into the private sector. It's a significant worry I do have, if I'm honest.
Thanks, Caroline. Kevin, I was just about to come to you as you waved your hand. This is a crucial question, isn't it? What is the role of local authority leisure going forward? Where do you see it going?
Well, we do, and we have done even prior to COVID. We were doing an increasing amount of work with local authorities to help them understand what they're trying to achieve from their investment in the service, what their outcomes, which communities do they want to affect, what do they really want to achieve in terms of trying to make a difference in their communities, addressing inequalities. And that's the starting point in this, is that a clear understanding of the purpose of the investment and what you're trying to achieve from this service. Then the question comes in, okay, if that is what I'm trying to achieve, and I understand that, I've engaged fully with my communities, and not just consulted with them, engaged fully, really understood the barriers and the issues that communities are facing, and why they might be not accessing some of the services that are currently provided. So how those services need to change. And then those solutions start to emerge. So we're often having discussions with authorities who say, we want to replace our facility with this. And we go, well, why the hell do you want to do that? What are you trying to achieve? Let's go back a stage and understand what we're trying to achieve, where we want to take the service in order to meet those objectives for your communities. And when those solutions emerge, and some of them might be capital investment in new facilities, some of them might be other revenue approaches, but it does shape the service. And it ensures that we get the service that matches the outcomes that are being delivered. So I would hope that it's not a case of mimicking the budget provision. It would be very much about understanding what is needed in those communities. And if there is a private provision within those areas, within those spaces, then that should be taken into account in understanding what offer the local authority needs to put into place as well. The issue, of course, is that's fantastic, and we often have that. That's great, Kevin. We all want to achieve that. Do you know how much financial pressure we're under as a local authority, though? So this issue about trying to balance the cost of the service with those outcomes is a tough ask, and that's something that is going to be a challenge, even more so going through the next couple of years, even beyond.
Lovely, thanks, Kevin. Just building on that, Utku, one of the things that MBS has focused on over the last certainly 5 years is this question of it's not just about the numbers of people using your facilities. It's who's using them, and focusing on whether we're getting to the people that that arguably the local authority provision should be targeting. How do you think that this new platform is going to help our understanding of that, and how's that going to help inform local authorities about the sort of provision decisions they need to make, often challenging ones I should imagine, over the next few years?
Thank you, Mike. I think, first of all, when we look at our sector, we have always said this has been a sector that's data rich, information poor. So we were never short of data, but we were really not using it to its full potential to make good decisions based on data and insight. But I think last few years have really helped with this process, and actually, if anything, COVID has pushed us to this direction now even more, because now we have even less resources available in most cases, which we need to use to in a better way. And also we have a changing sector, so we can't just rely on, oh, I have great experience in the sector, I've been in here for the last X amount of years, so I know what's going to happen. No, because these are really times that haven't been lived before. So we need to look at all the data sets available. And to answer your question, we have some great data there to tell us who is actually using and not using our own facility, who lives in our own area. So linking your data with your local data sets, which is accessible in the platform as well, and understanding where you have gaps in your provision. But it's not just about gaps, but it's also about opportunities, because if you start looking at the times of the day your facility is underutilized, you might come up with some really interesting insight. Actually, people who are in need of getting active most might be the best opportunity for you to address that underutilized times of your facility. So it's not just about getting your prime time usage to its maximum, but also to look at how you actually use your facilities to its full potential to get more people, to get it to the right people. But also it's also finding out the right programs for it, because it's not the same things that get people active from different backgrounds and from different deprived areas. So you can't offer the same thing to everyone and then expect to bring in different people into your facilities as well. So it is about identifying who you should be targeting with your services and offering the right things to those people in the right way. That will make your provision relevant for all parts of your society.
Absolutely. Thanks, Utku. Caroline, I'm conscious that we've got quite a few suppliers. As I said in the keynote, ActiveNet is all about suppliers. In fact, you're a supplier as well. Why do you think the suppliers to our sector need to be involved and engaged? Why is this information that we're going to get out of this, going to be really valuable to suppliers who are trying to build relationships with public sector leisure providers?
I think the platform will be very, very helpful in that for the first time local authorities and facilities will be able to benchmark, and they will be able to see who's doing well at things and who isn't doing so well. And as suppliers, and us being a health and safety and quality management consultancy, if one centre can see that another centre is doing extremely well in their operational management or their service delivery, us as suppliers hopefully will be involved in talking to the people who aren't doing so well, and they'll be sharing best practice. Because I think that there are some local authorities and facilities that are so much better at doing some things than others. And this is a great opportunity that we haven't had before. So I think it's really, really key.
Lovely, thanks. I've got a quick question from Swimhouse. Sorry, I don't have the name in front of me, about evaluating which families, which individuals of the community are given access to subsidised or free sessions. I mean, that's a very big question that's being that local authorities have been trying to address and thinking about for decades, about how best to target people. And it's not, we know it's not just about reducing prices or giving free activities. I don't know, probably Kevin or Emma, I know that Sport England has done an awful lot of research about this. This is about engaging people who are inactive. We know from the free swim and free other activity initiatives. That it's not just about price. It's not just the money that's the barrier. This girl can, I think, has been held up as a leading example of things that of initiative that's broken down those other barriers. Would one of you two like to talk briefly to that?
Yeah, hi Mike. Yes, we did some work with the operator sector and local authorities on concessionary pricing. This was pre-COVID, and there's a raft of different approaches to concessionary prices, and there was a bit of a push to try to get some consistency, so that there was an understanding of what sort of concessions might be applied nationally, but it's just not possible to do that. It needs to be done on a local basis to understand the communities, to understand the issues that those communities face. But it is a challenge for local authorities to get it right, because if you're not careful, you can get into quite a complex assessment of how concessions and what you need for the general public is something that is simple to access, simple to understand, and doesn't become a barrier in itself. It is a challenge, and we know that some local authorities really work hard at this and really make a difference and put a lot of capacity in getting it right with their communities. And it should be something that is worked through with the communities, rather than dreamt up in an office and then applied, because that's not necessarily going to meet those needs of the communities. So a lot of time and effort is the key to this, working with communities to try to get it right. But you're right, and at the end of the day, if you work with those communities, what may come through is that it's not actually the price at all, is that they don't feel welcome in that facility for one reason or another, or it doesn't suit them in terms of the times of the program. So actually getting under the skin of what the issues are with those communities is the key to this, rather than just assuming that it's a price issue. Absolutely,
Kevin. I know from the many focus groups that I've done for local authorities and operators with inactive people that it's very rare that price is the one major factor. It's absolutely multifactorial, and we need to get under the skin of that. Just to talk, we've just got a couple of minutes left before we go into the coffee break. So what I'd like to do is just whiz around the panel really quickly and just ask you for 20-30 seconds on I guess what's the key thing, your key hope that we're going to get out of this initiative, this once in a lifetime opportunity to get so many local authorities, so many operators involved in this massive data collection and turning that into actionable insight. I'm throwing this out there a bit unexpectedly, so I'm looking for who wants. Caroline's got a smile on her face. I'm going to come to you first, Caroline. Let everyone else have a minute or two to think about their response. What's your 20-30 second take? What's your hope for this big new initiative?
I'm highly competitive, and back in the days when I was a contract manager for Rural Action, we used to go to our quarterly meetings and there'd be a wooden spoon for the manager that wasn't performing. And for me, the ability for centre managers and local authorities to see how they're doing and to be able to compare themselves and their stats with other organisations, not necessarily organisations, but across the sector, is fantastic. And it will give them a real improvement tool to demonstrate where they can improve and hopefully and talk to others. It's a fantastic tool for that.
Brilliant. Emma, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think it's building on Caroline's point. So having that comparison data, but doing something off the back of it that then brings you back to your communities and what you're trying to achieve. So I think that evidencing and then going back through and thinking about what can be done, what action could be taken to best benefit your local communities and increase participation.
Brilliant, thanks. Utku, I know you're excited about data. You must be over the top about what's going to happen over the next few months. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I think it is really building on both points that's said so far. I mean, there is a perception that data is sometimes people are just afraid of what it's going to show, or they're very concerned it will show something negative to them. But this is about, I see that always about the actionable part of this, the future look. And what I'm really hoping is that it will unite, first of all, our sector even more closely together. So help people people to collaborate more and also take actions and actually use this as use data as part of their daily routines and to make better decisions rather than something they need to do on site. So I'm really hoping it will be much more central to our decision making going forward, both as organizations and as a sector as a whole.
Absolutely. Kevin, quick 10-20 seconds.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really excited the fact that we as Sport England are in making this investment in this sector to help this sector, to support this sector. I think that's absolutely key, and I'm delighted that what we saw was an opportunity. And you do need to see opportunities. In this crisis, you do need to look for opportunities, and there was an opportunity to put a game changer into the sector here in terms of making a difference to the level of data and insight that we're going to get out in terms of being able to support this sector to make a case for further investment, because the challenges to come are pretty frightening. So if we've got better data and insight that will help us to meet those challenges, it's essential that it's made. So I'm really pleased that we've got one thing I should say on this as well is this is evolving. This isn't the end game here. And there are some people, Martin's added that point, other people have added in the chat, that this needs to be beyond what it is at the moment. But if you can get this right, this is a great starting point. But it does need to evolve, it needs to stretch, it needs to take on a wider position so that we get a greater picture across the areas and across local communities.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kevin, and thanks everyone. People won't be surprised that the thing I'm most excited about is getting a massive sample of for a sector-wide NPS. I'm really looking forward to that, and the ability to really drill down and see what's driving those different NPS across the sector. That's the finish of today's session. Hope everyone's enjoyed it. Thanks very much to those people that contributed. We've had questions, we've had a lot of comments there. That's really appreciated. And thank you very much to the speakers. It's been a fantastic session. Just a little bit of housekeeping to finish off. So we're now going straight into our coffee break. We've got, how long have we got for that? We've got 25 minutes for our coffee break. And for those of you that are doing meetings, your first meeting starts, so we've got 20 minutes coffee break. Your first meeting starts at 11:50. So those people that are having meetings,